Well, welcome back again, everybody. My podcast is called It's Good to Talk, and it sure is. People know me because I produced this book for Stoney McGurn, my good friend. He was born in 1941. All his life stories up until recently. It's also on audio. I will warn you, it does have some adult content, so beware. Go to Confessions after you read it. My sponsors are Liffey Van Lines, a moving company here in New York City, and they've been around longer than Jeopardy. And as they say, when it comes to moving, let Liffey do the lifting. I always have interesting people on. I want to know their life story, all of their stories, all different people with different stories. And as the saying goes, there's a story in everybody. The man I'm talking today is all about stories because he's the editor of the Irish Examiner USA, and he loves meeting people too when he's out and about. Paddy McCarthy, you are welcome to It's Good to Talk here with me. Paddy,
thank you very much, John. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to have you on. You're a good man.
It's a privilege to be on with you, John. Your show is absolutely unbelievable.
Thank you so much. Actually, last week, I had Meg Ryan on last week, and she was promoting whiskey from West Cork Distillers. And
she let a bottle of whiskey. Did you let a bottle of whiskey for me?
She's leaving one for you and one for me.
Oh, good.
Definitely. She works in 5 Mile Bar up on the Upper East Side. She mentioned 2 other McCarthys that are involved in the distilling of the whiskey, and they're from West Cork. 2 brothers, they're fishermen. And then there was a scientist buddy of theirs, and they're all involved in that whiskey. If any of my listeners didn't get that podcast, I would say definitely tune in to Meg Ryan. After I interviewed her, I had sleepless nights thinking about whiskey. Paddy, where were you born? Were you born in West Cork?
I'm from Cork City.
Cork City.
Came from a family of 10 kids. I'm
Good
the second oldest. 2 of them has passed on, one accidentally and one very young in birth.
Oh, wow.
So most of my family are all in Cork. Just one brother is in England. He's been there for 30 years.
Right.
Business and in the restaurant business for years.
Right.
And so I'm from Cork City. Been there a long time in the music business.
Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah. Talk to us about the music business, because I grew up in County Mayo, probably conceived in an old ballroom. My parents owned what was known as Healy Hall in Glenamoy, and bands used to come from all over. As a matter of fact, I remember bands coming as far away as Cork City, I guess, Cork County. There was a band I remember clearly. I think his name was Joe Mack. Do you remember him?
Joe Mack is a good friend of mine, actually. Joe's 86 years of age, and he's still gigging.
Fantastic. I'm always afraid to ask people if they're dead or alive, because I never know what to expect at my age. And I'm glad to hear Joe is still alive, because when he used to drive to Mayo, he added a comical humor to the show band era. I think he played the drums, and he would put a wig on and entertain.
Joe's with his band was the Dixies, as you know.
Right.
And Brendan O'Brien was the lead singer, but Joe's the only living member.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they've all passed on.
They all passed on.
They lived a fast and furious life, let me tell you.
Right, okay. Well, Willie Nelson turned 90 last week, so he's doing good. So Willie is doing all right. The drink and the smoke didn't kill him. So when you were growing up, how old were you when you started the music?
Well, I started work at a very young age. I had no choice because, as I said, I had to go out and work. As a very young kid, and became a milkman helper and being a waste collector and being everything before. I'm coming to the point you're asking me, and so I then started working in a shoe factory and didn't have the opportunity to go to college. As I said, I was the second oldest of 10, and we had to basically go out and work, the 2 of us. And but I was always into music from day one. And going back as when my grandfather had John McCormick, actually.
Wow.
Big LPs and things like that. And I had no choice only listen to him. And he was always a very good violinist. And I was always watching him, tried to handle it, couldn't get to it. And then I went away for a while, but then when I was about 16 years of age, I missed it, and that's when I really started. I took up the guitar first, enjoyed it a little bit, but I was more into the drums than that. And a friend of mine who was going to start a band with me, he was the drummer, so I was watching him, and I said, gee, God, I know I can do this, And I put my mind to it, got lessons from a man called Sean Ford, who passed away now, who was He was playing all on the Queen Mary and all that, and the liners. And he taught me for about 6 months before I even hit the skins, basically showing how to use my hands and my feet and everything. And he actually taught Rory Gallagher's first drummer as well, the same thing. And he felt that I was equal, if not better. And I was looking at him like that, So that's when it all started, John,
Right.
And I became semi-pro for a long time. Played a lot of bars and restaurants and pubs, I should say.
Yep.
And then I kept at it. And we got a residency in the Stardust Ballroom in Cork, 4 nights away. So it was great.
That was good.
Didn't go on the road much, but because we had four resident nights,
yeah.
and then in between we done a couple of weddings. The lot to hear was all long and all that type, and but it was fun. And actually, I'm the only living member of my band.
Wow.
Believe it or believe it not,
I believe it because you're
right.
right.
Lads like the bass player joined me from Rory Gallagher's band called Taste, Eric Kitterman. He passed away 2 years ago. My lead guitarist passed away last year in London. My singer passed away in Cork. He left my band to join the Dixies after Brian passed away, and he passed away. He got very sick about 4 years ago, and he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And the bass player, that was Eric. He's gone. So that was the basic lineup of the band. We had a lot of people coming in and coming out as well. Mm-hmm. And if I keep going,
sure.
There's a lot of them passed on as well, And they died very young, John. I'm not saying like they were anybody who were old. They were young, and they died for different causes.
Sure, of course. Well, when you mentioned the residency there, I often use this example when I'm speaking about marketing in particular and about the product perfection and stuff like that. The Beatles played in Germany, and when they initially started, like everybody else, they weren't all that good. But because they were playing...
They played support to the Roy Shogun.
Yes. And they were actually... that's interesting too. But because they had to play like 5-6 nights...
That is correct.
Twice, 3 times a day. By sheer repetition, they got good. So...
I often do 3 gigs a day myself.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And I've had a young man on here a couple of weeks back. His name is Jimmy Grady. And he sang a few songs for me at... He actually performed at a eulogy recently, and he sang Dolores King's song, which she made it famous, Caledonia. And he also sang Departing Glass, which is a fabulous song.
I know well.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you could sing it for me. And I told his mother, I said, it's not like he only knows 2 songs. He knows more than 2, of course. But I said, I'd love to hear him sing The Bright Blue Rose by Mary Black. And that's a very chilling, poignant song as well. And if it's performed well, I think it's equal to the Caledonia and the Parting Glass when it comes maybe to like a funeral mass. But we'll get away from all the death and dying and morbid stuff.
As I said, I got a couple of offers of going on the road. Well, we went on the road anyhow a lot as well. But they really joined a show band and that, and I can say there was a few of them,
Right.
And,
okay.
I thought about it a lot, and I was dabbling at that time then as well with the promoting business,
Right.
And I started off with giving local bands jobs, if you like to say,
right.
Folk bands and ballad bands and one-man bands and everything.
Right.
And then I moved up the line, and I got an opportunity to run a couple of big concerts.
Right.
I did, and I had like Planet work for me, Dire Straits work for me.
Excellent.
A lot of big stuff. Had good
right.
hits and everything.
That was a great era actually for music and all that, like the late 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yes.
So let me remind my listeners that my guest today is Paddy McCarthy of the Irish Examiner USA. We're chatting back in his younger days when he was very involved in the music business, the show band era. Of course, people that know me know I was born in Mayo in Glenamoy in the dance hall. And on a previous podcast, I was known as the youngest smuggler ever to bring whiskey in to the old dance hall that didn't have a proper bar to sell alcohol, but I had to sneak it in hidden under a box of potatoes. I was a bit like the smuggling nun. only not with a lesser habit, I guess. So, Paddy, good to have you on here. The Smuggling Nun was on a few weeks ago. So, Paddy, let's leave the music or continue with the music. Now you're promoting the music.
Yeah, I'd be here all day if I had to tell you all what I'd done, because I'd done about, without exaggerating, probably about 600 concerts,
Right,
Played a lot of gigs as well myself.
right.
But my biggest opportunity was to open for Rory Gallagher in the Macroom Mountain Dew Festival in 1978.
Right.
That was like my
Wow.
young days. And
That's a good time.
22,000 people at the gig. And it was great. It was great that he actually wanted us to open for him,
Fantastic.
And it was a big, we didn't make a lot of money out of it. We had good fun, if you like to say. And as I said, Rory's ex-bass player was playing with me that time, Eric, the Lord of Mercy soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a great challenge. But after that, I moved on to a lot of things. I played in the Cork Opera House.
Okay.
And a couple of gigs there played. And actually, another great thing was after the Miami massacre, about 5 years ago maybe, and I got a call would I come back to Cork,
right,
and open up for the Miami. And, the only one, there was only two or three of them left.
Yeah,
3 of them killed, 4 of them killed.
For my listeners, again, I did a podcast,
and I was asked to come back and would I try and put the band together, and I did. But again, my lead guitarist was in London, so I had to bring another lead guitarist in, and we went down to Cork Opera, so the house full.
Right.
And it was great that we done a half an hour before the Miami came on, and that was great for them to request us. Because when I came back, I asked them, the promoter, why. Dominic McSweeney was his name, from Mitchelstown. And I said, why did you want me to come back with all the bands in Cork and that? He said, they particularly requested you and Sunset.
Okay.
And that was absolutely fantastic. Because then I brought back my lead singer, who then was after joining the Dixie, but he came back to do the gig, so I basically had everybody but our lead guitarist, and it was a great event, another great privilege. And I'd done a couple of gigs before and after in the Copper House for different events. And,
so, Paddy,
I was always, I don't know what it was, is I took a bit of a beating with concerts and different. I had Buddy Rich on concert, actually. He was, just to introduce him who he was Frank Sinatra's main drummer, but even though they hit hits together. But I had a couple of huge acts, big ones, and some of them were very, very successful. Some of them were not.
Yeah.
And that all happened in 1 week. What happened to me to come to the United States of America was I had a sold-out concert of Human League, who were -- in the charts in Ireland and England.
Yes, indeed.
They were to play for me on the Monday night, believe it or not. And I had a concert sold out. I won't tell you how many, but because of the Cork Opera House, our Cork City Hall, that's where the gig was. Knowing that I was sold out twice over, if you like to say,
Right.
And, but the band got in, and their equipment didn't get in because there were a lot of synthesizers in the group, and their truck broke down and lost.
Oh God!
On the way to Waterford, Rosslea, and they never got in. I had all the guys now that are working for U2 today. They all started with me. A lot of them started with me as we call them pumpers. They did all the putting the gear in, setting it up, and all that. And make long story short is that equipment never got in. So the main promoter was from Dublin originally, but his office is in London, called Paul Charles. So I had him booked into the Metropole Hotel, where I stayed there now. Anytime I go home, I stay there. Right, and we sat around. I sat around the band and the whole thing. They said, "Okay, it's what we do. We do the gig tomorrow night, Right. And so I had to go down outside the City Hall and put posters up. There was no concert. They weren't playing in Dublin. They were doing Cork and Belfast. Right. Because of the start of fire, if you remember.
I remember that indeed.
And it was shut down, if you like to say, in Dublin.
That was the tragedy that happened on Valentine's night.
Yeah. Well, I had the Platters playing that one about 2 weeks before that in the Stardust in Dublin. But anyhow, after the meeting, I then had to go and book the City Hall again. So that paying twice. I had to get insurance again. I had to get all the hoppers. I had to get fitness. I had to get everything. Staff, security and all that. I got a call around 12 noon that the concert wouldn't be happening.
Nightmare.
Wow, here I am telling everybody that this concert's going to happen. Little did I know that Paul Charles was running the one in Belfast himself, and he made the decision, you know. And I'm telling this him, I hope he's listening to this, you know.
Hope so.
But he's not, he's from Dublin originally. So on the same week, that was on a Monday, I had a Motorhead. I had 1,700 tickets sold, and I basically probably got another 500 walk up. And we're all in, but the night before, RT Orchestra was playing there. You don't mind me telling you this, John?
Not at all. No, continue. I'm enjoying it.
The night before, RT Orchestra was playing, and there was false pillars all over the place and seating all over the place. So I was down there around 10 a.m. in the morning with my guys again, all to help with they had about 3 articulated trucks outside the door, believe it or not, with all their equipment.
Right.
So in comes their road manager with his briefcase, with his aluminium briefcase, believe it or not.
Right.
And he said, "I'm back. We got to talk." So he says, "We go up on the stage. Let's check it out." I say, "What's wrong with the stage?" I said, "Everybody plays on this. Rod Stewart was only here last week." So he go up the stage, and he says, "Ops." He gets on the phone, goes, and he says, "I'm sorry, we got to cancel the gig." I said, "Why?" He says, "It's 3 feet too short."
Oh God.
I said, 3 feet too short. I said, "Are you kidding me?" And he says, "Also, there's a little lip. There's a stage like had a little heel on it."
Ramp, yeah.
And everybody played there. They canceled the gig.
Oh my God.
That's all the same week. On a Saturday night, I had Planet booked, house full, in Connolly Hall. And that time there was no cell phones. So I got a bang on the door. Bang, 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 bang. About 10 o'clock in the morning, Saturday morning. I lived in a place called Model Colleges at the time. And I come down, there's a telegram. "Very sorry, Paddy, we cannot play tonight because Grandma passed away."
Oh my God.
Sold out concert. Now think about that.
That's
I
a
had
lot.
of money, but I was going to make a lot of money that week, you know?
That's a lot of knocks.
Instead of making it, I lost a lot of money, which I couldn't afford.
Right, that happens.
So I got over it. But then
From adversity.
I was humming and hawing. I came over with a friend of mine. He was raffling this bar. He asked me to come over as being his mouthpiece. And I did. He kept me here for about, not exaggerating, about 4 to 5 weeks. I said, "I got to go home, man, you know."
Yeah.
So, because he was paying all the way. And I said, "I got to get away." So back. So when I went back, actually, the Wolf Tones were playing in Park Keevan Court. And Oliver Barry, who was a good friend.
Right.
And because I heard of the Wolf Tones many times. So a friend of mine called me, bass player again, who's passed away again. And
Right.
he said, "How about we go down to Wolf Tones? Down the Cleaners playing." So I said, "Yeah." And okay, I go down and Oliver just spotted me in. The Dubliners were playing actually on Sunday night. The Dubliners were playing. And so Oliver was the promoter as well, you see. So after 2 weeks, I said, "You know what? I think I'll go back to America for a couple of months." And I was illegal, actually. And I did. I came back. Cutting the long story short, and then I became a bartender. I was never a bartender in my life, but I was able to drink a couple of pints, no problem there.
I bet you can.
You know, so I became a bartender in a place called Goodfellows on 2nd Avenue. And believe it or not, is the characters I was serving, Kojak, I used to serve him.
Yeah, right.
Rocky Graciano and Jake Lamato.
Right.
I used to serve these guys, you know. One be at the hotel and they pretend to be fighting each other and all that type of thing. So I done that for a couple of years. But I was never happy. Right. Even I didn't care about the money I made out of stuff. So I wanted to go back doing a bit of gig, and then I was offered 1 or 2 jobs with 1 or 2 Irish bands, and I have to admit they were more into softer stuff and that. Like I was a bit of a rock and roll drummer and that.
Right.
I didn't do it. So for a long time I never told anybody I was a musician or nothing like that. And then I got an opportunity to come aboard for an Irish flute player by a man called Joe Murphy.
Okay.
Joe passed away. Joe was very well. Joe came from the Irish Echo, and he started a paper called the Irish Voice with
Right.
Neil O'Dowd.
Yeah, well known Neil O'Dowd.
Joe had great confidence in me when I come aboard as again in the marketing side of it and the advertising and that. And so I said, Joe, I never done this, but he said, no, I'll tell you this was Joe that I taught me this, talk to me this and that. So make long story short, I took the job and I became very, very, very successful.
Okay, good.
You know, and that's there for anybody to
see.
Talk to Neil O'Dowd or what I could give it up. And so I actually ended up, believe it or not, being Joe's boss, which I didn't like at all, you know,
right?
Which I didn't take it on as it was, and I never showed it was or anything. But anyway, because I had the total respect for the man, he was fantastic. He was from Whitechurch, actually, outside Mallow there. And so then I got an itch myself that I got to do something. And I knew a man that had a motorcycle magazine, and I talked to him. He said, why not you do a magazine? I did. And I'd done a magazine called the Irish Connections. A very beautiful, glossy magazine, 120 pages. And it was doing okay, but it was costing me so much money for staff, office, and print.
Right.
I was getting the advertising, but not enough.
Right.
I had to say, And I've kept it going for about 3 or 4 years. And then out of the blue, I said to myself, I was watching what everybody was doing, and I was watching what I was doing, because I was doing an entertainment column in the Irish Voice as well,
Right.
So then I said, I think I started off doing a newspaper. Everybody thought it was crazy. So it's like a fella said to me, he says, come here, he says, how are you doing against the Echo on the Voice? I said, I'm in 3rd division, we're coming up.
Yeah, number 3.
So I kept it going, and a bit rough for a while, and my wife thought I was crazy, so she probably was right on that part. But
maybe.
I kept at it, and I got a lot of respect then.
Right.
And I have to admit it's absolutely growing beautifully. I'm not in competition with nobody, and I would never try to be. I'm not trying to be better than anybody.
Right.
I would rather be down to earth, and
tell you are down to earth, buddy.
Do this, I can do that. I ask for rates. If I can't get the rates, my mother used to always say, half a loaf is better than no loaf.
Correct, yeah.
And that's the way I am, I have a nice staff for me. I have a lot of people. I have people in Ireland writing for me, which is beautiful. One man covered the whole conference that was in Belfast, his name is Pete Kelly.
Right.
Beautiful job. I have a man that covered Bruce Springsteen in Dublin. What a beautiful job. And I have a travel editor who came from the original Cork Examiner.
Right.
Has been my man in Ireland.
Right.
All my tourism editorial stuff. And between that, and then I have a couple of freelancers in between, and then I have 2 editors as well, 1 main editor.
Good.
And so
let me remind my listeners again today that my guest is Paddy McCarthy of the Irish Examiner USA. My podcast is called It's Good to Talk, and it's good to listen to. Paddy has already chatted with me about the music background that he had and my own dancehall era from Glenamoy. I forgot to mention, Paddy, which you reminded me of a lot of the highs and lows indeed, and that can happen in the business. When I was only 1 year old, little boy, and my grandmother was holding me, and my parents built that ballroom, right? And they built it from scratch, and they had to borrow the money or get credit from the hardware store to build it. The first dance, the ballroom was full with about 300 people, which was probably the amount of people would hold. And everyone had left at about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And a storm came and knocked the dance hall to the ground. And luckily enough, there was nobody killed because there was no people that were all gone home. And the only one that died in that accident was a cat. And my mother had to face the hardware guy again and start all over again and build. And the community were good. Everyone chipped in and helped with putting up the blocks and mixing cement. And the ballroom opened again. And that ballroom will never, ever fall again because it's pretty well reinforced. So out of adversity comes greatness. So now here you are talking to me about, you did some work with Neil O'Dowd, who's a great man. You did mention there the Miami massacre. I did a podcast here with Brian Layden, a historian, and we covered Easter Rising up to the Good Friday Agreement. But the Miami Massacre was tragedy in the...
and I didn't mention it was Steve Travers, the bass player, who invited me back, So.
Right. But the Miami Massacre was during the Troubles in Northern Ireland.
That's correct.
And that was a tragic and poignant time, almost something like Sunday Bloody Sunday. But bring us up to date now with the Irish Examiner. How long ago did this new paper, the Irish Examiner USA?
I've been doing it now. Tonight I'm doing it around 18 years now.
Wow, time goes by.
Yeah, and I had a magazine, as I said, and
I remember
it's
that.
still in the back burner that it was my real love,
Right.
And I know now that I can't do it digital and that, So my
Right.
editors on my back all the time to do it because I have so much features that I can put in and the whole thing that people would love, right across the board, But I was telling one other thing there, stepping back, John, going back. I never talk about being poor and all that. Everybody was poor, John.
Indeed.
Going back, And we
Poor
didn't have a one-bedroom house again. I didn't tell all that story. My grandfather lived in the same house, And I'll tell you one great story is my mother would bring me down to the coal care, which is like the market, second-hand clothes and all that type of thing. And I got a Holy Communion suit, with short pants and all that stuff,
Sure.
So I've done my Holy Communion, and I made the short too. And so then on the Monday, she said, "Look, take that down to Mr. Jones, down in the pawn office, you see,
Right.
I'd have to run down before school, and come back about half a crown, So then when I went to school to St. Mary's of the Isle was actually amazing. I just these things like.
Sure.
And I still remember the nun, Sister Aloysius. Now she says, tomorrow it says now we're going to do a little parade for all the communion boys and girls in our little garden. And I want you all to come in here with your Holy Communion suits and everything and your rosary beads. So I go home and I tell her, Mom, we're going to do the Holy Communion procession in the morning. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, she said, what? Here, go down to Mr. Jones. Go down there and get that parcel back. Here I didn't know what was in the parcel. So I come to Mr. Jones. Oh, here's the parcel, man. That's all right. We'll be all right tomorrow for that.
Oh, God.
Back onto the parade. You love to hear the best one. So I down there, around the corner, seeing all the prayers and all that. Done the whole thing. Came back down. Got home because we got a half a day, whatever it was, about 12 o'clock. Take that suit off there, she said. Go upstairs, put your other clothes on, she says. I'm going to put you on with the horn, man. That'd be all right. We're that. Downstairs, anyhow. And she said, go back down to Mr. Jones and give him that parcel back. Little did I know it was the same suit that was going in there.
Yeah.
So that was I didn't think that was on my head, Joe. Just to tell you, like I know everybody was in the same stretch,
Oh, funny.
because we never had nothing. And
Oh.
you know what we were done? We were happy as hell.
Well, indeed, we were
But I just want to get that in the story.
happy and poor is right, or poor and happy. I think when you're poor, you
I
don't
wasn't
know what it is.
I wasn't born with that silver spoon,
Well, neither was I, indeed. But as I
John,
often
tell you what
say,
is, I have a great saying in life, always look at the bright side, because
I totally agree.
we're only passing through, John,
I totally agree with that too. Indeed.
You have to enjoy every day. And everybody's not going to love you. My wife thinks everybody's going to love me. I said, no, nobody's going to love me.
Well, that's true enough. That's
That's
guaranteed.
it, man, So coming back to
changing to
the paper is, I have an imagination all the time, and I try and not be lauded. I always try to mix it up, and I always like to help out anybody that's young.
I know you're a very
I
generous
always
man.
like to help out the societies here.
Right.
And that's what I do, And all I want is everybody to, like you're doing with your podcast, that with people would just check in. Hey.
Yeah, indeed.
Like me,
I want to mention that too, because I'm a big fan of the paper, and I love it for just what you said. Like in early March there, every activity and every function that was on, you got your update there. But that doesn't go just for March. I mean, I check the paper every week.
Sure.
And I'm very impressed. You have Bruce Springsteen on the front page this week. I noticed that. Big stuff coming up there. Then the small stuff, but not so small. I know you'll be interested in this one. There's a punk rock festival in the Irish Arts Centre
That's correct. I covered it, John. I already covered it.
I know you did. That's where how do you think I know?
Oh, yeah.
I have to get my information from some source too. So the Irish Examiner USA is my source. And I see there's golf outings there. My friends from Fitzpatrick's Hotel here on Lexington Avenue have a big golf outing next Monday, the 15th. Friends of mine are attending that. Pat Burke from LTB Mechanical. They do a lot of work in the hotel. And of course, the IBO has their monthly breakfast there. And while I mentioned IBO, I have another young man coming up in another week. He's a young historian and journalist to be podcast. He had his birthday at the IBO at Fitzpatrick's there 2 weeks ago. So the IBO, they have their meetings 4 times a month. There's evening meetings and morning meetings. So check out the IBO.org.
I try and get to as many of those as I can, John, too.
I do too, but it's hard to be everywhere. Yeah. And I also need to give a shout out to Paul Finnegan as the president of the IBO. Yeah. And he also does a podcast called Centerpiece. And I'm like you, Paddy. We're not in competition. If people like a podcast, check out Centerpiece too. And you'll get other characters. Like I have my characters, and I enjoy my characters because I don't consider them my characters, but I want to share them with the audience. So everybody now knows that Paddy McCarthy is not just a newspaper guy. He's a talented musician as well, with a personality and a big heart to help the community and help the Irish diaspora. So
I love everything that's Irish. Everything.
Well, it's a great way to be, and we're lucky people. We arrived here, and thanks to the Queen of England, I speak English, better English now than her because she's dead, and I still speak Gaelic as well, by the way. And Meg Ryan was on with me last week promoting whiskey from West Cork, and she's also a Gaeilgeoir. So, Paddy, what else is going on before we wrap up here?
Well, as I said, John, I love what I'm doing, and I enjoy it so much, and I go to a lot of events, I go to the, tomorrow I'm going to see the Cardinal. He's been honoured, and Adrian Clanry has been honoured from the radio station.
Adrian Clanry, Mailman, yeah.
And then the following day, I go to the Irish Arts Theatre for Tourism Ireland as an event. So basically, I'm always like doing something, if you like.
That's great.
And
fantastic.
I try and get to as much as I can. And don't get me wrong, I like to have a glass of wine at these too. I don't want to try one. That's the truth. So, I enjoy doing it. But again, I like to, you meet somebody who's interesting, and I do my best to cover them and do what I can.
Right,
I don't care whether you're that size or that size.
Right.
I'm not into. Why am I going to put a guy on for my cover who's already established when there's another guy here who would love to be moved up?
Right.
I'll put him on the cover.
Right, indeed.
And that's the outlook I have, and that I have that driven into my editor. Hey, this is what I want, and that's it. So I will always try and help somebody out. Sometimes, I mightn't get around to him, and but take it.
Oh yeah, I know. I've known in the past. I've seen there when Mick Melanphy's an Irish actor here. He did a smuggler in the Irish Rep Theatre, and you gave him great coverage. And I actually did a podcast show with him, and I will have him on again in about a week. We're doing a piece about Bloomsday, James Joyce, and that's promoting Bloom's Bar on 58th Street. So you really look forward to Mick coming back to me. And I know Mick appreciates you. He's also a Cork, half Dublin, but we'll take him as Cork man.
I thought they might tell you about. I had the more, if you like to say, when he came to America. So there
you go. And that's the way we do it.
Thank you so much, because I'm going to throw back at you now, because I like your stamina, what you're doing, and I will always support you, because
thank you.
You're always a gentleman to me, and that's
very much. Well, it's like we're throwing bouquets here at each other, but I'll accept the bouquet. I'm still
a rock and roller, John.
I know you are. You're still a rock and roll. Well, it's kind of ironic that I grew up in a ballroom in the dance hall, and all the show bands that came from all over, and
yes, that's right.
My mother and father were very kind to the people in the music business, because I knew they had to drive for hours, and they always made food and tea before they started, and they were always kind to them. And my father was very strict on our upbringing, and he'd always say things like, shame the devil and tell the truth, But in your business and in my business, times change. And there are a lot of devils that cannot be shamed, but we always try and tell the truth anyways.
Yeah.
And
well, I have a great thing, John, that we're all here. Like, you know, when a guy says to me, come here, where are you from? I said, I'm from Ireland. And they said, no, but where are you from, like? I said, I'm from Ireland. I always keep, I never try and tell them, we're not from Limerick, Cork, Antrim, whatever. Hello, we're from Ireland. Hello? You know?
Yeah,
I always try and put that across myself, like, you know?
Well, here we are.
Because I believe we're all here. We all came over, you know, for some reason or other, you know?
That's what I was saying.
If we were a community that we should be on top of everything, you know?
Absolutely.
That's if everybody puts the blinkers on and hey, let's work together. Bang.
Work together. Well, I agree
totally. Like about the parade losing numbers and all that, and that is back to we've got to instill to even the kids. Hey, this is us. You know, we're Irish.
Yes, indeed.
Everybody come together.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there and all of that. And when I had Brian Layden on here, historian, we did talk about the Easter Rising, and we went back, of course, to one of my favorites, Michael Collins, and we came all the way up to what Michael Collins signed, and then the Good Friday Agreement was signed. And myself and Brian, we're serious about keeping the issue of a united Ireland open and out there to be talked about, not just forgotten about, so that we do get peacefully to a goal of united Ireland. And I liked the stuff you wrote in the Examiner. You had Gerry Adams and you had Bill Clinton, and all that was extremely well covered, without a doubt. So we always keep an eye out for everybody that's Irish with Irish aspirations, and to educate and to look at our history too, and talk about things openly. Paddy, I'm going to leave you the last word, okay?
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to leave you the last word.
You give me the last word is like, and here's what I'm about, is basically telling who we are and what we are. And I want us, meaning us,
correct,
we are the immigrants that came over.
Yes.
And if we can have the same feeling about Ireland as the person that was born in America,
yes,
and they're classified as Irish Americans, but they're actually more Irish than us.
I agree with that.
I'm saying that because I met so many of them. And
yes,
if we who came over here and expressed it more, we would be a bigger community.
I agree totally. And when I did that podcast with Brian Layden, we forgot to give extra credit to George Mettle, the senator that negotiated the Good Friday Agreement. Everybody else was mentioned, but especially Senator Mitchell. He was one man that did a lot of work to create the Good Friday Agreement. Paddy, I'm going to say slán.
I want to tell you something. Thank you so much again.
Oh, my pleasure to have you.
And my pleasure to have you. I hope you get someone more important than me the next time.
I never look down on another human being unless I'm helping them up. Everyone is equally as important, but I did have a strong affection for Meg Ryan because of the whiskey, and of course the smuggling nun. If she can keep me happy with the poaching,
she's very nice. She's very nice.
Lovely, more doubt, yeah. I'm happy to have her back. Okay, Paddy, I'm going to say slán go fóill.
Slán go fóill.
Slán go bhaile.